Before we get this video started, I wanted to put out a little disclaimer. So last year for my best books, I think I had 5 top books, and a few of those had some content problems. And while in my best books video I tried to give solid content reviews, I still felt a little weird about some of those books being on that list. Now, fast forward to this year, there's not the content concerns aren't as great, but there's still a few books that'll be talked about in this video that I feel a little weird about. So while I will try to give solid content reviews of these books, I just want to say that if any of these books do interest you, be sure to do your own research into them because there might be a concern that I didn't address that you might have. Right. Hello and welcome back. It is that time of the year where we get to talk about the best books of this year. So I think this was a good reading year. I mean, it started a little rocky with me not really liking some books that I expected to like, but as soon as I got out of my I need to be drawn in to really like it phase and started to appreciate books that I otherwise would have had, whether I otherwise wouldn't have liked, then it got good. And so we're going to talk about these best books. I had said earlier that I probably won't talk about the worst books again, although I'm thinking I might address that maybe in the comments of this video. So maybe I'll do that. But then we're going to talk about the best books. And we have a lot more books in the best books category to talk about than I did last year. So that'll be good. I will say one thing that I think because I got distracted with other videos, one thing that I liked about going from your first initial review on Goodreads to the recent reads to then talking about it later, I like how kind of sometimes your thoughts evolve on a book, but for some of these books the thoughts haven't evolved much, so sometimes for some of these books there won't be much else I have to say other than what I've already said. So yeah. So yeah, there's that. And then one last thing to talk about. I did try to do synopses for some of these, but I didn't do them for all of these. I only really did them if I wanted to or if it would make my other comments make sense. So yeah, there's that. And I also don't want this video to be too long because we have quite a few books to talk about. So alright, I think that is all for introductions. Let's get into it. Alright, so we're gonna start with the honorable mentions, and this is gonna be in no particular order, but I'm gonna start with Only If You're Lucky by Stacy Willingham. I feel like I've talked about this one kind of a bit. So I guess the short kind of synopsis for this one is you have our main girl, she forms a friendship with this mysterious girl, and she invites her to this off-campus house that they're renting from the fraternity, but then later on one of the boys from the fraternity is murdered and this mysterious girl is missing, but things are not as they seem. Alright, so I remember while I was reading this thinking, okay, this is definitely 4-star worthy, but I don't know if I would consider this one of the best books I've read this year. So, I mean, I guess one thing to say that this might not be true for a lot of booktubers, like four stars is like any 4 stars and up are automatically considered for best books. I know for a lot of booktubers that isn't the case because they have 5 stars and 4.5. So I mean I have 4.5s too, but they're mainly 5 stars that they focus on. But I feel like even if I do eventually have a 5-star, there probably at this rate won't be that many of them. So yeah, but 4 stars are still considered. So anyway, so I thought this one was pretty good, but not the best. So I figured the best place it would be in honorable mentions. Also, I kind of had a glance at some of the reviews on Goodreads, and apparently it seems like not a lot of people like this one, but I mean, I don't know. I liked it. I don't know what to tell you. The one thing about this book that this didn't really bother me that much as I was reading it, but it would be a problem, maybe not a problem, but more of a concern if I tried to read it now, is that there is swearing in this book, like F-bombs and other words. I can't remember how frequent it is, but yeah, that is something to consider if you want to read this book. So Yeah. Right, the next honorable mention to talk about is Out of My Mind by Sharon M. Draper. Yeah. So basically, this book is about a girl with photographic memory who finds a way to communicate, and people realize how smart she actually is. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good song. So this one, I remember while I was reading it thinking that this was pretty good, but this one I don't really think about that often. Not to say that it's forgettable, but just that I don't really think about it. I think the main thing for me that like keeps it out of like me really liking it and sometimes questioning like at first I thought okay maybe this is 4.25 and then what keeps it out of the four is there's like some parts of this book that are like is like a me problem but like gross to me and not like gross like sexual weird but just more like traditionally gross. So like I I guess the main part for me that I think about is like she talks about there's like a boy in this class who poops his pants and it stinks up the whole room. Like that part it like stuck in my head and I'm like I don't like this. Other than that, this book is really good. So yeah, I don't know what else to say. Alright, so this next honorable mention I haven't really talked about on my channel that much. I think it was in yeah, it was definitely in a reading vlog, but other than that, I don't think I really talked about it. That is Feels Like Fire by Nicole Feller. Alright, so I for sure wanted to do a synopsis on this one because this is not this is a very obscure book. Alright, so this book follows Casey, who at the start of the book lost her boyfriend in a tragic accident. But then through this event, she ends up meeting his twin brother, Lennon. Well, I guess I should have said so her boyfriend's name was Lucas, and then now she meets his twin brother Lennon. So like they meet and they're kind of both going through so they're both kind of grieving the same person, but for different reasons. Like Casey is grieving her boyfriend, and Lennon is grieving his twin brother. And so they're kind of going through the grieving process together. And of course, through that they end up falling for each other, but then they both feel guilty about falling for each other because they feel like they're betraying Lucas and all the things that goes along with that. So so this is again obscure is a self-published book, and I think self-published is kind of known for like the quality's not gonna be as good as like traditionally published books. But this one I think I might have been because I'm not sure if Sunlight Girl was also self-published, but I think it might have been, and I didn't like that one as much. But it seems like those two were kind of like the first self-published that I read, and that was kind of like because they both seemed, even though I didn't like Sunlight Girl as much, they both seemed like kind of good quality. Like this one is because this one I think it was like good quality, like good way of telling the story, and I also kind of like the vibes of like some of the, or at least what I imagined. Um, my only really complaint about this book is that I wished we could have seen more of Casey and Lennon actually together, but thankfully there is a second book coming out next year called In the Fire of It All, which I'm very excited for. I'm probably not going to get to it next year, but I think in that one hopefully we'll get to see more of them actually together. Alright, so for content for this one, I think so Nicole Feller, she like kind of advertises her books as like writing closed door romances, but even with this one, I don't think there's even like anything to imply they did anything. I think there was just kisses. And even then not that much. I think there might have been language, but I can't really remember much of it, so I guess it's not if there was language it's probably light. So yeah, it's a really good book that should get more attention. So, yeah. Another book by Stacy Willingham, All the Dangerous Things. So, I figured I would like Only If You're Lucky because the plot sounded interesting and it was kind of apparently, according to Goodreads, similar to other thrillers that I liked. But I wasn't sure about this one, not only because the plot didn't sound as interesting, but also the person that I heard about this book from, it was kind of like every book that she's liked that I read, I either didn't like or didn't like as much as she did. So, yeah, I wasn't sure about this one, and unsurprisingly, I didn't really care for the first half of this book. And I mean, yeah, I didn't really care for it, but in the second half, where it was kind of where all the pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, that's when it really like won me over, I guess. So yeah, I don't really know much more to say other than that. There was also, I'm thinking, because I don't, there's also not really a romance in this one, which I appreciated. So for content, I know like the other Stacy Willingham book talked about only if you're lucky. That one definitely had language. I can't remember if this one had language. It might have, but I don't remember much of it. And there isn't really a romance, so there isn't really an opportunity for spice or anything. And I guess kind of triggers for like child abduction, because that's like the main mystery of the book is this woman's son was taken. So yeah, other than that, so, yeah, an unexpected good read. Another book that I didn't expect to like was The Atonement Child by Francine Rivers. So yeah, this was my first Francine Rivers book, and I think my main concern about it was like the plot, because it seemed to be about a girl who gets pregnant as the result of RAPE. So yeah, and there was another book that I read that had that, and I hated that book, so I didn't think I would like this book that much. But what really stood out to me about this book was Francine Rivers' like writing quality, maybe more so storytelling than writing quality. Like I was pretty impressed, and I guess I find that sometimes when I know about something that I don't normally like in book, when I find out that's in a book I'm about to read and I know that going into it, sometimes I end up liking that book more than I would if I hadn't known about that. So, like, there's that. I'm not really sure what else to say. And also, this book is also, like, I guess cleaner than some people would say for like other Francine Rivers books. Like, of course, part of the plot is like essay, but thankfully we don't really get any details about it. I was impressed with the way it was done. So we kind of see her when something's about to happen, but then we switch over to someone else's who like who like reports it. I guess is how it goes. So I mean that can't be a spoiler because that's early on. So yeah, I'm kind of rambling. Yeah, so not really much content concerns. But now the thing is about what? Okay, so now I'm not really sure like how much more I'm gonna continue with Francine Rivers. I did also read Redeeming Love. I'm not really sure. I feel like because I was trying to like take in people's concerns and like kind of present it in a way pretty objectively, I feel like I don't really know what I even thought about Redeeming Love. So there's that. And then some other ones of her books I'm interested in. I am curious about Bridge to Haven, although I'm concerned that one might have some content concerns, so I'll have to look into it more before considering to read it. And one that I probably will read is, wait, what is the exact? I wrote down the title, but I'm not sure if I wrote the title right. Hold on. Oh, okay. So I wrote down the title as When the Shofar Blew, but it's called And the Shofar Blew. So at first I wasn't sure. At first I wasn't interested in that one because, like, what is that title? But then I found out what it is about, and I was like, oh, I guess I am interested in that story. So, yeah. The next two honorable mentions I read semi recently, and I don't have much to say on this one. We have I Am Not Jessica Chen. Yeah, I wasn't sure if I wanted to include this one on the list because of some elements that I didn't care for, but I think it's overall a pretty good book. And there's the romance is just kissing, and there's only a little bit of language, but mainly from one character. So there's that. And then also The House of My Mother by Shari Franke. Yeah, this one was pretty good. One of the few memoirs I've read, and I was sucked in to this story. Yeah, there's obviously triggers for like the story surrounding the Franke family and some other things, this being Shari's story. So, yeah, I don't know what else to say. Alright, And my last honorable mention is the only reread on this list. I did recent reads of rereads, and only one of those books made it onto this list, and that is Holes by Louis Sachar. So yeah, I said only reread. And I thought based on because I remember I really liked this book when I was younger, so I thought rereading it that this would be like a 4.5 or maybe even a 5-star, but I ended up giving this 4 stars, which is still pretty good, but I guess not as good as I remember, and I'm not sure why it was only 4, because there wasn't really any problems, but I mean, I guess just didn't make me lose my mind. So, and yeah, and this is middle grade, not really any content concerns. So that is all for the honorable mentions. Now we're getting into talking about my top books for the year. So of these books, the last year I had 5, and that's because I guess I was going for top 5, but I wanted to kind of not pick a strict number. So these books that I consider the best, I have 6 of them. So yeah, and unlike what I did last year where I went in the order of when I read them, this one I actually tried ranking them like from 6th place to then on. So yeah, I tried that. And I also try not to be super particular about the star ratings that I gave these books, more so like in the rank of what I consider the best. So yeah. And I guess the main takeaway I've learned from this list, and I guess you could say, well, I guess maybe for these top books, is that contemporary YA can be really good. Now, I guess the question we'll figure out next year, can Christian contemporary YA be really good? Alright, so let's just get into the list. Alright, so in 6th place on my best books list is, drumroll please, P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han. So, as I've talked about before, the first book in this series, which I was most looking forward to, I didn't really like as much as I thought. And it was so but I still continued on with this series, and I was impressed by the second book, which was definitely my favorite in this series. Of course, the writing and the vibes were great of this book, which of course was the same with the first book. But then the issues that I had with the first book weren't really present in this book. So, yeah, of course, I can't really talk about the plot because it's the second book in the series and it's very connected to the first book. So, yeah, there's that. I don't really have much else to say. So, I guess for content, there is swearing. So, there's that. And there's also a bit of talk about sex, but thankfully not in an explicit way. So, yeah, there's that. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Alright. In 5th place is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Fredrik Backman. This is my first Fredrik Backman book. Maybe a bit of a weird pick for a first book from him. But yeah, this one. And this is one of the few books I've read this year that are like, can be studied in school level good. Because I feel like there's a lot to dissect from this story. There's so many things that could be potential symbolism and all these things. But this is also one I'm most conflicted about being in this video, mainly because of the language piece, and that there is frequent use of the S word. So, yeah, and I mean, I'm not even really sure if it would bother me as much if I read it now, but I was really bothered by it while I was reading this. So yeah, keep that in mind. Not much else to say about this one. In 4th place is In Some Other Life by Jessica Brody. So this one was an interesting reading experience because while I was reading this, I was like going back and forth, like, oh, what's this? Oh, I don't know if I like this. Oh, okay, maybe I do like this, but wait, what about this? And oh, I don't know what about this. But then by the end, when I got to the end of the book, I knew this has to be on the best books thing. But I was like, well, what do I want to knock out? So I eventually decided on 4th place, which I think is about right. So, not sure what else to say. It's a interesting story about this girl who's like she wanted to get into this school, but then she chose not to because of a relationship, but then that relationship doesn't go well, so she wishes she could go back and change that, but then she could get transported to a life where she did choose that, and she realized that's not that great. So yeah, there's that. I liked that story and like all the I don't really know, it was just good, and it was pretty good for content. Like for content, there's literally only one usage of one bad word, and I don't even remember what that word was. And then as far as there is a little bit of a romance, and that one is just kisses. So yeah, there's that pretty solid YA book. Yeah. In third place is All That Really Matters by Nicole Deese. I have quite a bit to say on this one. So basically, this one is about an influencer who volunteers at this program for kids who have aged out of the foster care system, and she ends up connecting with the girls there, but also with the leader of the program. So yeah, there's that. So with this book, I basically went into this book blind. Like all that I really knew about it before going into it was that it was about a social media influencer and that it won and that it was a Christie Award winner. That's basically all I knew. So I didn't read much about it before I got into it, and even since then I still haven't seen much about it. But one kind of review about this book that I saw that I want to mention here is that the standout of this book isn't the romance, but rather the character development of our female main character. And I think I would agree with that. And I think now it kind of makes sense why I liked this book as much as I did while not really caring for the romance. Because otherwise it sounded a little like it didn't make sense. Because I was like, how can you give a romance book 4.5 stars if you didn't really care for the romance? But now it makes sense. I can explain now. So yeah, and I think this was the last book that I read that I really liked mainly because I was drawn in. Because surprisingly, this is a turd. I was about to mix it up. This is a page turner, surprisingly. So, but then also I loved the vibes. I loved the relationship that the main girl had with one of the girls at the program. So, and I also I read this book on vacation, and I gotta say, reading this book was the favorite part. Was my favorite part of that vacation. So yeah, and I think content. So this is Christian fiction, so there's not really language, and with the romance, it's pretty much just kisses, and I guess in part of the plot there is talk about oh this girl at the program might be sleeping with this other guy at the program, but yeah, we don't really get those details. So yeah, overall, yes, I don't know what else to say. Good book. In second place is The Solace of Water by Elizabeth Byler Yutes. So yeah, this book is basically about a friendship between an Amish woman and a black mother and daughter. And all three are our main characters. We get perspectives from each of them. So I think this book is probably the most special book on this list to me because through this book I got out of my I need to be drawn in to really like it phase. And what's crazy about that is that I really only started appreciating aspects of this book without needing to be drawn in like I think over halfway through the book. So like most of the book I wasn't really enjoying myself, but then what made it more special is when I went to do a review of it and I realized that I couldn't really think of anything negative about it. That made me kind of thinking about this book more and that kind of okay, this has to be a really high ranking book for this year. But now that I've kind of thought about it more, there are some more uncomfortable parts of this book. Like, I mean, of course, some people do like questionable things. I think it's a few scenes involving our Amish main character. There's a part where her husband asks her to drink, and she does so. But then we kind of found out later it's because he wanted to sleep with her that night, and then we find out with her waking up the next morning, and she realizes that's what happens. And then there's another part of the book where the black mother and daughter come and find her like laying naked in her house. So like those are some more uncomfortable parts, and then some, I guess, other parts of it. The daughter, Sparrow is her name. There's some parts where she's like hurting herself with these like thorn bushes because of the guilt she feels for her brother's death. So yeah, there's that, but it's still all of that, but I wouldn't say that was like that took away from the book. I think that just made it more real, more, I don't know, like just like it's kind of part of the beauty of this book is like the is part of the uncomfortable sins of it. So the sins of it, and like I don't know how to explain that. I wasn't really thinking much about that part. So yeah, this is a really good book, but it doesn't beat out the first place book. And in first place for this year is How to Disappear by Sharon Huss Roat. So yeah, this book I started reading it, but then I can't remember how far I was into it where I was like, this is feeling like a 5-star. But then I ended up giving it 4.5 stars because later on in the book there are some things that are introduced that I was like, I don't really want to promote this. And one is more like content related, but the other thing that I wasn't too sure about was the kind of somewhat self-love messages here and there. So basically this book is about this girl who she doesn't really talk to anyone other than her friend. Then she creates this social media account that gets a lot of attention and people feel inspired by her, but then she kind of keeps that secret from the people in her life. So, and that story was really interesting. I don't know, like the vibes and everything. I even liked the romance. So yeah, there's that. And then, so for content, for the first like 109 pages of the book, there's like no language. But then literally on page 110, there's the A word is used. And I was like, no, we went so long without language. And then after that, there's like a few more instances of language, but it's like, I mean, it's pretty light compared to like other secular books, even secular YA books. So there's that. But then with the romance, there's like just kisses. So yeah, it's okay for that. So yeah, maybe not the cleanest terms of content on this list, but it was my favorite of the year. So that is all for this video. If you want, you can comment down below some of your favorite books from this year. So yeah, that is all. Goodbye.